Coming up on today's show.
It's almost like this feeling of collaborating. It's almost as if I'm collaborating with the woman in the picture, like we're collaborating across
Mm,
time, right? And there's a point at which we both agree that this collaboration is done.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a very kind of specific like series
Mhm.
so that I've come to recognize now. And it always starts with a photograph.
Mm,
So and my art practice was not always like this, right? Like I've always been creative, but doing very different things. I quilted for a long time. I worked with metal clay. I did visual arts, but really things clicked for me when I started doing portraiture using these archival images. What creativity is, which is what we strive for and is one of the pillars of psychological health, is it really is a marker of psychological flexibility.
Hi there, I'm April Paige, breaking down the what, when, where, and how creatives get their inspiration. I'm a big fan of the cursey words, and I've been a creative for 30 plus years in marketing and fine art. This is where creatives unite to break down the facts of creative life. Buckle up, let's get lost in the world of creativity together. Welcome everyone to Artist Antics with April, where we talk to creatives about creativity. And today I'm very excited to sit down and talk to artist Sara Koenig. Welcome, Sara.
Hey, April, thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here. And just for our audience knowledge, Sara creates richly layered works that merge history, photography, text, and abstraction. She draws inspiration from childhood immersed in books, art, and again, digitally alters open domain imagery, then builds depth through paint, monoprints, and textured mark making. Works primarily on wood and large scale canvas using acrylics, inks, rice paper, mulberry paper, and found objects. She explores themes of memory, narrative, vulnerability, and shared human history. And by profession, a physician specializing in addiction and mental health in Cary, North Carolina. And in many ways, her art serves as a tactile visual diary, a space of vulnerability, exploration, and renewal. So, welcome again, Dr. K. I'm so happy to have you here. And my first question is, and I always ask every guest, what is a spark that brought you to art? I know what mine was as a child and the support I had in my family, etc. And I just like to understand, did you grow up, it sounds like, with some household books and arts, and how
Yeah,
how did that environment like shape you?
yes. Well, first of all, Sarah, you don't need to call me Dr. K. That's
Okay,
okay.
great.
I'm also not going to prescribe anything good for you today. Just so you know, there's
So,
no like quid pro quo, just so that our audience knows. I was basically an only child, and as a Gen X person, I was also somewhat feral growing up. So I essentially grew up in a house filled with books. My father was a history teacher and very much an academic. And it was really just him and I for most of my early childhood. And so, just like every wall was just filled with books. And if there was any kind of open shelf space, there were artifacts there. So he
mm,
collected a lot of ancient Greek artifacts, ancient Persian artifacts, all kinds of things. He gave me a necklace when I was in my 20s, I think late 20s, that's actually made with these beads that are used, that are like put over mummies before they're put in their sarcophagus.
mm.
Like, so that's the kind of like intellectual environment that I grew up in. And I think I inherited a lot of like natural curiosity and creativity from both sides of my family. So you kind of merge the two. And this
Interesting.
is, of course, before cell phones, before the internet. Who knows what I would have grown up to be, if I
Yeah,
was born now? Like,
yeah,
God knows.
yeah.
At
No,
the
that's
time.
That's great. That's great. What a rich environment to like spark
Yeah.
your imagination. Were you always creative since like a child?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Like
Yeah.
if it was good weather, right? I like we lived in the woods. So if it was good weather, I was off in the woods like for the whole day, just having these stories, these elaborate
Yeah.
stories, and building forts. And,
Yeah.
I was always pretending I was an orphan. I was like,
Okay.
it says a lot. But always these elaborate stories. And if the
Yeah.
weather wasn't good, I was inside, tucked in some corner, writing or creating stories, or, trying to just, I was in such a rich environment, and I was merging everything together
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah, we're very similar. I call it, making your own world, so
Mm.
to speak. And your
Yeah.
creative mind is so fruitful, I think, especially when you're younger. And if you have the direction to go that way, you start, just inventing things, and it really, goes from there. Yeah, no, that's great.
And
So
it's
go ahead.
interesting because I just kind of took it for granted. Like, neither
Mm,
of my parents, although my father was creative, but in a very industrious way, like he built his house,
mm,
like built it, like got the nails from a local blacksmith, and did everything but the electrical, and would make pottery and stuff like that. And my mother did some watercolor and stuff like that. But I was never specifically like encouraged to do art.
yeah.
And I never thought of myself as particularly talented. It
Hmm.
was just kind of baked into who I
Right.
was.
Yeah, because not
Yeah.
all kids have that environment. There are some environments where there's no art or music, or, they
Yeah.
just don't, that's not how they operate. So I think it's a beautiful way of growing up that you experienced. And, I think it's a dying thing. I agree with you, like what's happening now.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
sound like an old person when I say this, but it's really not about that. It's about humanity and the kids, and losing art, really, because
Yeah.
art is, not many people want to do it anymore. And so I feel like we have to keep the fire, that spark, lit. So thank you for that. And you've said, in some of the stuff I read, that you enjoyed painting over the kinds of pages you were never allowed to draw in as a child. So, what does that represent for you? Like, what does that mean for you as an adult, or maybe as a child, and now as an adult? How does it give you glee? Like, what what does it do?
I mean, it does. It also, I was just writing about this the other day,
Oh,
right? Because I talk about how, like, in these very different ways, my father's no longer with us. He died a few years ago,
so
but
sorry.
we both engage with the past in a different way,
Mm,
right? So there were always lots of textbooks, and and history books, like, oh my god, they're just books, like you can't do anything without tripping over a book, or a dog.
mhm,
At
mhm.
least sometimes the dog would like cushion your landing, so there was
Right.
that. But and he was always annotating in books, right?
Yeah.
But you can't like draw in them, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so there was like this reverence, and there were artifacts. There was this reverence for that. So, like, the past and science, whether it was, physics or whatever, was always present, right? But it was present in a way that was not alive,
Mm,
right? And for me, when I go through and I may tear up a textbook or a history book, or I work a lot with archival images,
mm,
and I edit them, and I'll color them, and then I'll add this like fluorescent paint, right? And for me, it's like I'm searching for and infusing signs of life into them, right?
mm,
So there's this very, I take after him in a way, but it's this almost like a mirror image in how we interact with the past, and how we interact with bodies of knowledge, and like
yeah.
the documentation of bodies of knowledge.
Yeah. No, wow. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. I've used, speaking of pages, I've only done it on one piece thus far, but I use Bible pages to put
Mm.
on, I did this more modern take on an angel that looks like stained glass, but
Oh,
it's on canvas and acrylic and oil. And part of it, where you see the background, I used Bible pages and I painted over them, kind of like what you do, but maybe a little more obscure than yours. And yeah, I just wanted to punch home, the spirit of the whole piece. But so before I ask you about those individual elements, I just want to hear about, walk us through your process, like from start to finish. You don't have to give any,
yeah.
secrets, but basically, I just want to know, like, when a piece begins in your mind
Yeah. Yeah.
to, do you experiment? Do you do color arranging, practice and then start? And then how does the process go once you start? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a very kind of specific like series
Mhm.
so that I've come to recognize now. And it always starts with a photograph.
Mm.
So, and my art practice was not always like this, right? Like I've always been creative, but doing very different things. I quilted for a long time. I worked with metal clay. I did visual arts, but really things clicked for me when I started doing portraiture using these archival images. So I spend a lot of time, more time than I'd care to admit, going through like archives of like the Library of Congress or New York Public Library,
Okay.
all these different sources, looking at faces and looking at photographs. And mostly I'm drawn to women.
Mm.
And I'm drawn to figures and faces that look like they're carrying a story, right?
Mm.
Or they're carrying an experience, or there's some kind of, sometimes it's just like a spark of recognition, like, right? Like they spark something in me that makes me feel seen in a way.
Right. Right.
It,
So does the story, when you see these images and you pick up one or two or how many you hone in on, does the story affect who you choose, and or
well,
is it just the image and
interesting,
then you
right?
let the
Because
story tell itself? Yeah.
so I don't know what the story is, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's just this look, right?
Okay.
I
Okay.
have them. So I spend my day, I actually do a lot of psychotherapy with my clients. So I have this amazing privilege of being able to enter people's intimate worlds, right?
Mm.
And also knowing that you never truly know somebody's intimate world. So I'm looking for people who look like they have an intimate world, and knowing that I'll never really know what that intimate world is, but they
Yeah.
have a look that intrigues me.
Yeah.
And so I'll choose them for that. And then I'll start to wonder what the context of their life was like, right? I don't know their individual story, but what can I know about the context of their life?
Yeah.
So I did this whole series that's based on photographs that were taken at Ellis Island by like a senior clerk at Ellis Island. This is a series of photographs of women that were taken in the detention center there, which is much nicer than the detention centers that we hear about in the news right now.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, these women were kind of in limbo, right? They weren't, immediately ready to, to enter the U.S. Not all of them ultimately were able to enter the U.S. And they were, voluntold, I guess. I mean, there was no discussion of consent, which is really interesting that I found in the literature surrounding this series of photos, which was in the very early 1900s. So I wonder, I looked up the countries that these women came from and thinking, what must it have been like, right, after this travel across the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the clothing that they're wearing,
Mm-hmm.
and from that really inspires the background that I pulled together for them. So I have one that's one of my favorites, and she's from Lapland, which is now like northern Finland, really.
Hmm.
And the indigenous culture is Sami culture, Sami people. And she wears this knit cap that really, to me, looked like an aviator's cap.
Mm.
And so I ended up, I used like molding paste and an acrylic paint and heavy acrylic medium, and I created these wings for her
Mm.
that I added on, right? And then I have some Sami indigenous writing that's in the background. But
Hmm.
then I also have some textbook images of indigenous architecture from a different continent entirely, right?
Okay.
And then I'm looking at it, actually, it's on my wall right now. And then I have, there's a portion that is actually my handwriting, but inverted,
Mm.
that I'm using. And there's another portion where I created texture, um, just doing kind of a monoprinting on a gelatin plate using a little plastic thing that I had to create a pattern.
Yeah.
All of these different elements kind of come together, and some of the backgrounds of the photos or some of the backgrounds of the pieces have more cohesion than others. But what I really love about her piece is that it more closely resembles kind of the jumble of books that would be beside me in my corner, in the house
Right.
when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, it symbolizes that for sure. Yeah, I totally get that. So, in the actual process, the physical process, do you lay down the picture first on the canvas
Do
or
both.
okay.
So they're parallel processes, right?
Okay.
So I will I download the digital photograph, right? And I isolate the figure. So I take away the background.
Hmm.
And then I will isolate different parts of the figure, right? So I like adding color. So I'll, isolate like her little
Right.
theater cap, which is a
Right.
cap, right? And her scarf, I decided to make magenta. And so I do some basic coloring through using Pixelmator, which is basically Apple's version of Photoshop.
Great.
Um, and then I will ultimately print that. I have a Canon pigment printer. It's like a 17-inch pigment printer. I'll print that on a number of different sheets. And then it kind of reminds me of my quilting, actually. I'll end up kind of putting them together on the
Right.
ground when they're ready. The background is a combination of, pages that I've taken out, that I have painted. But what I tend to use more is if I take a page or if I find a digital image, I'll actually do an image transfer onto rice paper because I really like the transparency of rice paper.
Mm.
So I'll use, it's called a jelly plate, but they're made out of latex now, right?
Yeah.
I'll do an image transfer technique, and then I'll use the rice paper to pick up the image. And then I'll put the rice paper on the background, right?
Okay.
I'll construct the background, and I prefer using wood panel, although sometimes I'll use like a deep canvas.
Yeah.
And then once the background is ready, right, then I'll either put the image on there in pieces, or I'll add more paint to the image and then put it on pieces, right? So I'll either add more paint to the image before or after I put it on in pieces. And then like things start to kind of come alive, right?
Mm.
That's when I get the idea of, oh, this woman needs wings, right?
Right.
There's a piece that I finished recently of this, indigenous Bolivian woman, and she's got this like deep red, well, I don't know what color it really was. It was probably white, but I made it red. This like red tunic. And I was like, it needs texture. So I went and I got all of this like thick embroidery thread. And, I've just been like layering and layering and layering the embroidery thread on top.
Right.
So like that kind of magic only happens once those two pieces are married. And then I continue to work on it until it kind of declares itself done in my
Interesting.
mind.
Right. And how, like, for me, and I don't know if this is your case, but for me, I have to sit with them. Like, I put them in my living room, I stack them and put them in my living room so I can look at them for a couple of weeks to make sure that I still think they're done. Because if they're still good to me after that time, like I'm still excited about it, and I would put it on my own wall. That that's when I know, okay, it's ready, you know. But so, do you know that finished moment right away?
I do. Yeah.
Okay,
So they're more like, for me, it's more like serial dating, right?
do tell.
Like it's rare that I have a piece where I've got one piece that's like that right now, maybe one piece that's like that right now, but it's rare that I have a piece that I'm kind of ambivalent about and I put it aside.
Yeah.
I mean, usually it's almost like I'm it's almost like this feeling of collaborating. It's almost as if I'm collaborating with the woman in the picture, like we're collaborating across
Mm,
time, right? And there's a point at which we both agree that this collaboration is done.
yeah.
We spend a lot of time together, right?
Yes.
And when it's done, I don't go back to it. I'm trying to think if I've ever gone back to, well, I did go back to one, but only because I realized I'd forgotten to sign her.
Yeah.
And this was after I picked her up from a gallery after a show, and I was mortified.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Well, it happens.
happened. It had to, there's now like a sign on the inside of the door to my studio that's like, did you sign it? Question mark. So that's gonna live there for a while.
Yeah. So
But yeah.
it sounds like you're really intuitive with your process, and I love talking about that, with everybody on the show. So I'd like to dive in there a little more, like, and I've gotten every answer in the rainbow, but where do you think that inspiration or that intuition comes from? Like you were saying, she needs wings. Where do you think that comes from? I call it, when we're in the flow and we're sitting down to paint, I feel like we're in that receiving mode, and it's almost like putting an antenna up to say, okay, I'm receiving now, and I'm going to get into this creative flow. And that's where it comes from in my mind, for me, in my process. So I'm just curious where you think those ideas come from. And it's okay if you don't have an answer. I just love to
I
explore
mean,
that.
I
Yeah.
think that, and this kind of, delves a bit into like neuroscience,
Yeah,
into my work
absolutely.
as a physician, but I think there there is so much um, information that we absorb, right? And we spend more of our time absorbing and collecting information. When I say information, I don't necessarily mean like a fact, right? Like
Yeah.
the population of Iceland or whatever. But, that's green. That tasted a certain way, that, whatever, just things that like things that come through our senses, right?
Yeah.
There's so much that comes through, but what we don't do is we don't spend a lot of time connecting,
Mm.
making connections, right? And this is one of the reasons why I think people who are creative, one of the things that they do is they allow themselves the time and the space, right? And kind of give themselves the invitation
Mm.
for these connections to be made.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful way to say that. I've never thought of it like that. Yes, you have to have a certain level of wanting to invite that mystery into your life. And, I don't know about you, but and I'd love to get your answer on this as well. Like, I get in that flow, but I never know when it's gonna hit. Like, there are days when I have 5 hours. I have a whole day to half a day to do whatever I want today. So besides prepping and cleaning, it's like maybe have 3.5, 4 hours in there to like do my thing. And so I sit down and I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I'm fighting. I'm fighting with the canvas. I'm fighting with myself. I'm like, what's going on? And then there's other times when I have like a half an hour and I sit down and I haven't prepared. I'm just like, okay, let me get this in because I've been thinking about how to do this nose or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
I sit down and it starts happening in the most inappropriate times where I don't have time, or, like I
Right?
was like, why? Why is
I
this happening?
so this happens to me. Like I'll get
Okay.
ideas. I was like going to bed the other night and it was, I had to get up early in the morning and I was trying to fall asleep and I had this idea. I'm like, oh, this is the one piece I'm talking about that I was kind of ambivalent about. And I'm like, oh my God, I know what to do. So I had to instead of walking down the hall, which is what I really wanted to do and doing,
Right.
I like got my phone, got my notes app. I'm like, okay, like this is what I have
Yep.
to.
Yep.
So I think being able to write something down,
Yes,
is so crucial. And I
it
think
is.
having reliable, kind of like training your brain to know that you will have studio time, right, is
Yeah.
so important
Yeah.
because you know that you're going to have this space, right? You know
Yes.
that there's going to be this open invitation.
Right.
Um,
It's almost like prayer and meditation. Like, you
yeah.
have that time to pray and meditate. Sometimes, things come to you, sometimes they don't, but you always have that set time with the quote unquote universe.
Mhm.
It's like the way I'd like to put it, to, be open to receiving.
Yeah.
And so that's a great way to put it. I've never thought of that way, believe it or not. And when I'm in those modes, I have sometimes, you know, um, it's flowing so well that I'll rearrange my whole day because I'm just like, okay, I have to ride this wave.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
If you can like that,
yeah,
oh, those are magical days.
yeah.
But you
But
have to show up even if it's not a magical day.
yeah, and to your other point, like, I have notebooks of stuff that I will never create in this lifetime because I have so many ideas that come to me all the time and series of ideas. But it's a very good point for the audience. You got to record all of that so you don't lose it. But also, when I'm in working on a painting, like I'm doing one right now, and I'm trying some new things. So I'm writing down and I keep a folder of like all my reference material, all my notes, all the colors I'm using, like what did I lay down first and how did I, the process I did for that, because I'm exploring a new style. So I'm trying to now be more diligent about keeping a file for every piece. So if I have to go back and say, how did I do that again? Like,
So smart.
yeah. So
Yeah.
speaking of styles, so I'm interested on how, I mean, I think you've kind of talked about how your style evolved, but I'm very curious because I'm going through my own new identity because I was a 30-year senior corporate marketer. And now I've had art as my side hustle for 20 years. And now I'm making it my main gig, right? So, but my stuff is very flat now. I love my paintings. I love what I've done in the past. Don't get me wrong. It's not me anymore. And especially like I'm evolving in this new identity as a full-time fine artist. So I want to put more energy on the piece to represent energy. And I don't know what that is yet, but I'm curious to see, like, when you first started with paintings or working on wood, is it very different from now? And like, do you feel like you're going to evolve as you evolve? Because I'm trying to figure this out myself. Like, is my style going to be ever evolving? And my mentor tells me I need to hold in one spot once I figure this out for a little bit so people can understand, who I am, what my style is, what I'm trying to say. But I still feel like, there's more layers of that onion. So I'm just curious to hear about style evolvement and any thoughts you have there.
Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
when I first started working with paint on canvas, I did, kind of a lot of like abstract stuff, and it felt good, and um it felt good, and it felt more like personal exercises for myself,
Mm,
right? It felt like self-exploration.
that's right.
But when I first had the idea of, and I don't know which one was, oh, I started, my first series was Women Samurai. It turns out there were women samurai. That's another discussion. But that was my very first series. When I started with that,
Cool. Now I'm going to go read about that, but go ahead.
I'm such a nerd. But
Me
um,
too.
and when I started working with figures, something clicked. And there was this sense of, there was like,
A knowing.
it was a recognition.
Yeah. Hmm. I
Yeah,
understand that
a
fully. Yeah.
knowing. It was like, this is where I belong. This is what I love. I have no doubt I want to work more with uh, pictures of children, men. A lot of the photos I'm really intrigued by are from documentation that was actually commissioned by Congress in the early 1900s for this whole, yeah, investigation into child labor, and the Depression era photographs. And, again, I could go on forever. Um, but people, right? Like
Yeah.
there, and it really, I did not see this, because of course the most obvious things sometimes are the things that you don't see.
Mm,
But it really kind of dovetails with why I love my work so much, right? Like, in my ideal world, I would still be working. I'd like to be working, fewer days than I work right now, so I have more
yeah.
time for my art.
Yep.
Um, but because it's all about that intimacy, right? It's all about, these inner worlds, and honoring people, and honoring the existence of inner worlds, even if you don't know what they are,
Right.
right?
Yeah. No, that's exciting. It's such an intriguing process, and I really enjoy what you're doing and your pieces. But so, speaking of work life balance, like how do you keep that going? Because a lot of people that I'm trying to reach, I want to show them that you, even if you only have 10 minutes, you can enjoy something that has sparked in you since a child, and it grows from there, hopefully, into not just a hobby, but maybe eventually something you do. So given you have such a professional strong schedule, I'm sure it's hard. How do you
Yeah.
balance it? But do you have, and I think I know the answer already because you kind of alluded to it, but do you have specific set times, or do you also listen to your intuition as to when that will be? Yeah.
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I own my practice.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So I'm my own boss.
Great.
And I also have an amazing team that I work with.
Mm,
So I don't work alone.
yeah.
So I'm able to, like, right now, every other weekend is a long weekend for me. And I take admin time during the week. I take Wednesday afternoons. But even before I had the luxury of being able to do that, like when we were, I didn't have as large of a team, I think, I would set aside, okay, I know that, I'm going to have 4 hours on Saturday, and I'm not going to feel guilty that the
Yes.
house looks like it's been ransacked by pirates, you know?
Yeah.
Um, like, I'm okay with that because I'm
Yep.
going to have 4 hours to play, right?
Yeah. Gotta
And
embrace the dirt, is what I say.
right, I have no shame.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, just being able to do something at the end of the day, for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, like leaving some like acrylic markers are great. They're
Yeah.
great. They're so easy. What's your cleanup? You put the cap on.
Right. No, and I've been playing
Yeah,
around with those. Funny you say that. I've been playing around with those with this new process, but go ahead.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, I was somebody who, like, for a long time, I fell into that category of people who like collected art supplies because that made me feel creative, even though I wasn't really creating anything with
That's
them.
right. Yep.
Right? It was
Yep.
like this like aspirational creativity.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was just like, okay, you know what? They're not doing anything. I need to start playing. I need to start making a mess, because the more messes I make, maybe I'll learn something. Maybe I'll get better at making messes.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that became the goal, is just to make more messes.
I like that. And I two things there. One is I have what I call a box of toys.
Mhm.
And I roll things on the canvas. So it could be a dog toy, it could be kitchen equipment, it could be I use a potato masher to stamp a design in,
I
or
love that.
whatever it is, computer parts, uh yeah, on and on. I've used baby shoes and stuff like that. So, um, you know, the mess is important because that's where the point for me is you have to have the background, or at least a little bit of perspective and color theory, and all the things, right? And that coupled with the other side, which is letting go so that the magic can happen. It's such a hard place to be, to be structured but also flexible. So,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to look for those things that excite me in that moment, to say, oh, that, let me follow that trail and play
Yeah.
around with that some more. And so, not just even for art, I'd love, since you have such a unique perspective on this, like, how important is that adult play, not just as artists, but I'd like to hear, you've already kind of talked to that. Um, how important is it just for any adult to have adult play? And it doesn't have to be art,
So
like it
important.
could be anything, just for mental health. So I'd love to hear about that. Yeah.
So, so, so important.
Yeah.
I think creativity, creativity is connected with so many things.
Yeah.
It's connected with, positive mental health, right? It's also create. I do a lot of work with people who've experienced a lot of trauma,
Mm,
right? And you know, there are so many methods of trauma therapy that rely on creativity, right? Not just using like traditional art therapy, but like narrative therapy, right?
yeah.
Just the way that, if you think about creativity as being able to, again, make connections and create new shapes between things in your mind, right? Or being
Mm,
able to see things, what creativity is, which is what we strive for and is one of the pillars of psychological health, is it really is a marker of psychological flexibility.
mm,
And that is really a core part of mental health, of good mental health, is
yeah.
psychological flexibility.
Interesting, because I'm thinking about when I was briefly in art school. I didn't like it so much, so I became a marketer. But
I never went to
um,
art school, so it's fine.
yeah, yeah. But my professor, in one moment, it was like, ingrained into my brain now, because it was such a pivotal thing that I did not understand then, but I understand it now. But I was being so precise, like,
Mhm.
with what I was painting. I don't even remember what it was now, but I was being ultra precise. And he was trying to get me to loosen up, right? So he just came by and like marked all over it with my paintbrush and said, "Okay, now start again and don't be so, perfect." And I was like, "What?"
You
Like,
didn't function?
yeah, I wanted to. I just sat there like I just spent like 10 hours on this thing. Like, what?
Mean,
And I was so
mean.
infuriated that I couldn't see past what he was trying to show me. Now I understand, but he was trying to show me, hey, you know, this isn't about being perfect. This is about expressing yourself. And there's
Right,
a big
right.
difference. And it's hard to get that perfectionism out of the way. So I'd love to hear, because that's part of my new style, is throwing that perfectionism out the window with all of these, this energy I'm trying to put on there. And the energy means there are marks that don't make sense, or
Yeah.
that aren't controlled by me. So I'd love to hear about the fight of perfectionism. Like, what do you recommend? What would you recommend to me as an artist who fights with that? I just fighting with this new style and letting go versus the perfectness. And there is no perfect, right? We're human, we're creating
Right.
something from our imagination, or a merge of things that we've seen. And so it's never perfect. It's just in our imagination. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah. Yeah, perfectionism is definitely a thing, and it's
Yeah.
definitely a thing among type A people who tend to be people who end up going to medical school, turns um and it's interesting in art because I don't think I'm a perfectionist in art. In some ways I am,
Mm,
right? Like I really want to make sure that the work is like varnished correctly. I want to make sure it's hung correctly. I've got the
yep.
wiring correct, right? Like
Yep.
stuff like that. Um, but um, beyond like quality parameters, the art itself is going to show the layers underneath. It's going to show that I had changed this to something else. Like it shows I leave fingerprints of the
Mm,
process in the work. And that's how I see them. I see them as fingerprints. I see, and this is something that I think is really important because it also distinguishes what is human made versus AI.
amen. Yes. So yeah, that's something we talk about a lot on here, is and I'm with you, just to reiterate, like, I don't this is my personal opinion, everyone. I don't particularly like photorealistic art, even
Yeah.
though I was going for that perfectionism in the past. I want it to be painterly. I want it to be even painterly than what I'm doing now. So I'm and it's just so important that we keep the humanness in art. So
Mhm.
um and I think, in my personal opinion, and I want to ask you about AI, but in my personal opinion, as long as it's listed as an AI piece
Mhm.
or AI digital work, whatever, I'm okay, because people know that that's what they're buying. It's not somebody human doing it. It might come from someone's human imagination, but so I'm okay with that, because I don't think, and I'd love your opinion, that AI is ever going to replace the need for, real art from human beings, at least not in our lifetime. But so how do you feel about using AI and either prepping for work or giving you new ideas, or have you used it to merge styles? I've tried in this software called Doll E, and
Oh, Dolly, I get it.
yeah, with an E.
So, I mean, I have nothing against AI art. I think artists need to be transparent about it.
Hmm.
I think there's some really compelling, like animated AI art on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen it. I want to
I,
say David somebody puts out some really kind of mind-bending AI
Yeah.
animated art.
I've
Um,
seen all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like crazy. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, did somebody like roofie me? Like, what am I?
Yeah. It's a TikTok fever dream.
Exactly,
You're
exactly.
like, what's happening right now? Yeah, go ahead.
But my personal preference is I like seeing the human hand
Mm,
in art. Um, I really do. I think, I mean, I use, you could say but that by using photo editing software, right? Like that's
mhm.
using AI.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I'm going through and I'm, using the little cursor to outline,
Yep.
different parts of the picture, but then I'm, clicking on things and using little slider bars. Like that's all technology, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
all harnessing artificial technology. So my process really is this combination of digital and analog tools. Um, I will where I use AI most actually is to help me with writing. So
I do too. Yeah.
that's what I use it for. Like if I want to write something, like I want to write you know, uh, uh, a post about something, or I'm at a loss. I use it for work because I do our marketing for work because I wear lots of hats. Except for house cleaner, we've established that's not paying. I'll
Yeah.
use AI to like come up with ideas or stuff like that. I
Yeah.
think like
Yeah.
super good for that.
Yep.
Um, but I don't use it in
A creative way. Yeah.
yeah, not
Okay.
really. Oh, you know what? I have used it. It can be there's one exception to that. I think it's University of Arizona. The alt text,
Hmm.
right? Like, for like visually impaired, there's supposed to be an alt
Yep.
text, which is a
Yep.
description.
Yep.
University of Arizona has something, I forget what it's called, but it uses AI and you can upload a photo and it will give you two sentences
Oh,
that
great.
describe the photo. And then
Awesome.
I use that. I will cut and paste those two sentences and put it into Artwork Archive, which is where I keep inventory of everything as the alt text.
Yeah. No, that's great. Good tip. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's
And
much easier than me being, like
yeah.
woman with wings
Yeah.
and hat,
If we can, maybe we'll put that link in the description for everybody. But
yeah.
so I want to talk about energy. And this is, again, my personal opinion. Like when I'm in a bad mood or upset in particular, I can't create. I can't, I feel like I'm trying to force things emotionally because it's emotionally intense to me to create artwork. So I have to kind of hone out everything of the world and then, focus in and try to find that flow that we were talking about. So when I'm in a bad space, and I've never tried to push through this, but I am going to the next time it happens just to see what happens.
Right?
Yeah, but I usually am not motivated to do that because I'm, pretty emotional person. But so what do you think about that? Have you pushed through, when you're in a upset or sad or bad mood?
Huh.
And does it help or hinder your process, or do you have to be happy and, you
Not
know,
really.
okay.
Like find out what your angry art looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to work on the same thing you were working on. Like pull out, a new sheet of
The
paper,
paper,
right?
yeah.
Or a
Mhm.
small canvas and just be curious.
Yeah.
What does my angry art look like? What does my
Yeah.
sad art look like?
Yep.
Maybe you just end up stabbing the canvas multiple times. As long as you're not drawing blood from
Yeah.
yourself, um, you're probably
Right.
fine. And it will be cathartic, right?
Yeah.
Because the act of expressing your emotion, right? This is art therapy.
Yeah. No, that
You
is
don't you don't just do art therapy when you're in a good mood. You
Yeah.
need it the most when you're not.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, I want to dive in now to exhibitions and groups and what you've personally, because I see you're doing a lot recently with a lot of exhibitions and things like that. So, I want to just talk about, how do you get your initial exhibition going and how did you get that momentum recently? It was because of the previous exhibition that you got the others. Like how did that work for you?
Well, I only started submitting stuff like last summer.
Okay.
I just I I mean there are a number of reasons for that. My art had never, I've always, when I've been in an art class, I mean, I took life drawing like in high school, there were always people who are obviously so much more talented than I was.
Yeah.
So, my art has always really been more about feeding myself. Um,
As it should be. As it should be. But
yeah,
go ahead. I know I have
yeah.
another question there, but go ahead.
I was part of this, and I still am, although I don't really visit them that much, but kind of part of this online artist community. And a lot of them were submitting stuff. And we would kind of get together on Zoom. It's a different platform, but it's similar. And I remember asking them, I'm like, how do you know when you're ready to submit something like for a show? And some of them were in shows. And they were like, Sarah, you're ready. I'm like, really? And so I submitted something and I got in. Else, I submitted something else. I got in. And I think I got into like I think I got rejected from two things. And it's not like I was submitting like for the Met, right? Or any of
Right.
these like
Yeah.
ginormous things. Most of them were local, a couple in Virginia, one in LA that I got into that was kind of mind-blowing. But I realized I I realized that I could, right? It was really one of these like ruby slipper kind of moments, right? Like, oh wait, like the only thing that was stopping me was me thinking that I wasn't good enough
We're ready,
or
quote unquote
ready.
ready. Yeah.
Yeah, like that.
No, that's
It.
interesting. So when you submitted multiple pieces or just
Yeah, no, I
one?
submitted, I think like three pieces each time. And I think, yeah, I submitted
Okay.
three pieces each time. And I got more than one, except in my first show, I got an honorable mention for two of my pieces.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was
Congratulations.
really cool. That was like really, really cool.
Yeah, no, you got to revel in those. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I applied, for a solo show for this magnificent space in Durham and then got that. Uh,
Wow.
so I'm very, I mean, I very, very, very fortunate. And I think,
Yeah.
I think that being an outsider and having art that is, I mean, I have my influences, like my biggest influence is like probably Bisa Butler, and she's a quilter, right?
Mhm.
Like,
It's funny you say that because I just went to QuiltCon this last
oh,
weekend.
I missed QuiltCon this year, but it's
Oh my
wonderful. I love
God. I
it.
found out from the art space in Durham. I
Oh,
happened to be visiting a resident artist there, and she told me it was going on downtown because they had some of the quilts in the lobby. And I was like, they look like
amazing.
portraits and landscapes and just beautiful works of art. And I was like, what is happening with quilting? Like, what?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know I'm late to that game, but obviously, but I went there not knowing what to expect, and I was flabbergasted. Like it
Yeah.
was that good that I even got some inspiration there. So go ahead about
Yeah. So,
sorry.
I mean, I think having inspiration that is outside of kind of the mainstream contemporary art world.
Mm,
Probably, and having a, somewhat unique perspective, due to my childhood and also kind of my
yeah.
profession and how I
Yeah.
got here, um, makes my art kind of distinctive and recognizable.
Yes.
And I think that that gives me a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate to have that advantage. That's not something that I deliberately kind of tried to craft.
Yeah, no,
Right?
it came about, and that's the best way. It's authentic to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So so one of my mentors is telling me I have to stay in a lane. So I did these, for example, I did these monochromatic blues musicians where I did this
Uh-huh.
deep phthalo blue with white and a little bit of black, or mixing those three colors, black, dark blue, and white. And I did these monochromatic blues musician paintings, like literally blue for blues. But
Got it. Yes.
yeah, and they seem to be, as soon as I paint them, they sell. So I'm just curious because I have so many other styles. I have my angels, I have my Asian series where I also did some trees for a while there, but not doing those anymore. But I did that, musicians, angels, and really, a lot of Asian work. And then I did realism and abstracts. And the abstracts I got known for these swirls, and they
Mhm.
were thick, chunky, paint. But my question is, do you think that it's needed for an artist to stay in a lane to be recognized with that distinct recognition now? Or do you think, because I feel like all of those flavors are me,
Yeah,
there's some kind of through line. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm just curious your thoughts about staying in a lane, being known for something, or being recognized so that galleries and collectors and art agents can say, okay, this is what April does. I'm curious your thoughts
yeah.
there.
I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
I'm such a new
Okay.
kind of little like creature in this.
Oh, no worries.
The advice that I would give you is simply the advice that I've heard, that, that has no more weight than any advice that you've heard.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, yeah, I do think that um, that when you think of an artist, if you're able to come up with a visual, right, that you can attach to that artist, that's an advantage. But if you think about, kind of the most prolific artists, you can think about different phases that they went through,
Yes, for sure.
right?
Yeah,
Uh,
but I try to explain it to people. I'm like, it's like eating vanilla ice cream for like 3 years. Nobody wants to do that. After the first couple of months, you're like, okay, I'd like to try another flavor now. But
and I've heard of, I have heard of stories of people who, finally got gallery representation, which, to be transparent, is something that is my goal. But they got gallery representation and they became known for like flowers, right?
mhm.
And now they feel trapped because all that they're painting
Yes,
are flowers.
that's what I did with those swirls. I got known for those damn things, and
It
I
drives me
did
crazy.
I did like 50 of them, maybe even more than that. And I was like, I don't ever want to do another swirl ever again. Like,
Right,
there's only so many directions you can go with it?
right.
So I was just like, no. And I was trying to move them as if they were going through to another point and like off to the side, and did one in the center that looked like a seed coming out, and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
after a while, I'm just like, I'm bored. I'm bored. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think it's just like a musician, they want to branch out too. There's a lot of crossover going on now with a lot of different genres with music, but I need to make myself happy. So I
Right.
really feel like the art I'm creating is coming out of me, and it is my passion, whatever it is I'm offering, and it means something to me. And
Yeah.
I'm not just creating for the commercialness of it all. Is it a nice, lake with a duck on it? No, so I just and I don't
I mean,
belittle
ducks
anybody
are
who's,
fine. We love
yeah.
ducks.
Yes.
Love
I
ducks.
don't belittle anybody who does that, but it's just not me. It needs to be authentic and
Yeah.
come from me and mean something from me, and I need to like it. And I think that grows with you as a person. I don't know. Um I'm especially having that crisis right that creative crisis right now, but I
Yeah.
really
I
believe
totally
that
get
you have to make yourself happy in what you're doing. So I think that's the line I'm following right now is what makes me excited to have that on my wall.
Yeah. Because I think that comes through, right?
That's right. That's what I'm trying to get through is this more energy on there to make me excited about it and
Yeah.
something I would be like, oh, look at that. So that's what I'm doing right now. Um, so groups, I want to switch over to groups.
Hmm.
How in you can talk about these individually or in general. How is your professional affiliation with the Durham Art Guild, which I'm now a new member of, by the way,
Uh-huh.
and Fine Arts League, which I'm going to look into, of
Uh-huh.
Cary, and how have they supported your growth, and what have they given you as an artist?
So I will say that I have until recently been a mostly absent member. So this is what I'm learning, right? Our tendency as artists, or I'll speak for myself.
Hmm.
My tendency as an artist, especially as an artist who also works and does other things, is I want to spend my free time doing my art, and my art is a solo thing,
Yes.
right? I mean, it's me and my
Yep. Your
and,
people.
and my collaborator, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I tend to live under a rock,
Yeah.
right? And but I realized that so I made this deal with myself, right? I was like, okay, in 2026, I'm no longer going to do that. I am going to go out. I'd been out for a few Third Fridays,
Yep.
which is in Durham. I'd been out for a few last year and I enjoyed them. And I decided 2026, I'm going to actually be involved. I'm going to go out. And what I've noticed is that even though I'm under a time crunch because of the show coming up and, just juggling a lot of things in general, when I have gone out and spent time talking to other artists and talking to them about their work,
Mm,
I have come back feeling more energized and inspired from my work.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, either in groups because I'm doing the same thing. That's kind of my resolution this year is to get involved with these groups, and I've been doing one-on-one meetings with different people too. It's like some people want to meet before we actually record, and which I think is great. So I meet them for coffee and I get to know them on a deeper level. And it's just so, you know, it feeds my artistic and creative soul just meeting with people that have the same passion as I do and they understand some of the basics of what I'm talking about without having to explain it, right? So I think that connection is important, but it also is, we're helping each other. They help me, and then I try to help them with any, marketing tips or tricks. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I think it's really great. Yeah. Okay. So, have they helped you place any art yet or?
Um, Actually, no, not yet, I would say, but it turns out when I went to this networking event on Wednesday, I bumped into a photographer that I hadn't seen for a long time. We had this connection because he had photographed some of my work. He had also taught my daughter how to drive, all these bizarre connections. But at any rate, he introduced me to somebody else who's a photographer. We ended up talking about my work, which uses photography. And now I'm connected and interested in a festival that might happen in October, which I would have never even considered before.
Yeah.
So,
Right. That's how I'm following the breadcrumbs too. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just these
Yeah.
like wonderful connections. And it turns out, I met this amazing woman who is also like does marketing. And it turns out that she's very close to where we're moving to. And she's, it's just all of these connections. And all I needed to do this whole time, like the ruby red slippers, right, was just to crawl out from under my rock.
Yes,
All
for
I needed
sure.
to do.
Yes, another good tip.
Like,
Well, I definitely got on over my time. Thank you for being so generous. And
it's
I
so
am,
much fun.
yeah, no, it was a really good time. And I'm going to put Sarah's information in the description of the video for everybody. If you want to see her work or want to, contact her and any announcements that you have.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I have a solo show coming up. It will be up from April through June
exciting.
in the Great Hall at Golden Belt Campus. Is in Durham. It's near downtown Durham. It's 800 Taylor Street. And the solo show is called Women Past in Present Tense, Explorations of Ancestry, Identity, Belonging, and Power through Mixed Media Portraiture.
Yeah.
And there will be an opening reception that is April 17th from 6 to
Okay.
9. And the opening reception also is on a third Friday. So that means that there's going to be so much more to see than just my art.
Yeah, no, but that's great. Definitely we'll connect on that because I'll post it on my socials for you. So,
Wonderful. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Feel free to nominate yourself or someone you know as our next guest. Thank you for being a part of our creative community. Stay inspired and keep shining bright.